If you're like me and you've been trying to buy a new motorcycle over the last 18 months, you've probably cried yourself to sleep at least once at how eye-wateringly expensive secondhand motorcycles are and how hard it is to get a delivery of a new motorcycle. So it's an absolutely crazy time. More than ever, it's hard to find a great value motorcycle. In this video, I've really dug deep to try and identify 4 motorcycles, that is adventure and dual sports, that offer a great value proposition in this crazy market. So let's roll that intro and get into these money-saving motorcycles. So there are a few things we need to establish before I dive into my top 4 suggestions for you to save a bit of coin and still get off-road and enjoy yourself. The first one is I'm talking about value here, not the cheapest motorcycle you can get. I'm talking about finding bikes where you get the most bang for your buck. The other thing I wanted to point out is that every market is different, so what I talk about may not hold exactly true for where you live, but this is a general guide. The third thing here is when I talk about value, we really need to uncouple our minds from just the purchase price. You need to think about the life of that motorcycle, how long it will last you, the costs of running that motorcycle, all those kinds of things, because value can be had in other areas other than purchase price. Think about accessories, availability, the cost of those, insurance, where you live, climate, all those kinds of things need to be taken into account. And if you do consider those things, then you can start to maybe save some money on the back end of your motorcycles. Let's go into the first category, and I'm going to start with dual sports because that's where my heart lies. So let's dive into the 2 dual sports that I think really have been slept on a little bit, despite their popularity in recent years. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the KLX 250S. Now, why am I talking about that when there's a brand new KLX 300 out that everyone's drooling about? That's my point. Everyone's focused on that bike. Yes, arguably on the spec sheet, the KLX 300 is the better bike, particularly if you're wanting more power. But that means that not everyone is paying attention to the KLX 250S. Now, this is important for a few reasons. One is on the secondhand market, like I stated before, it's quite overpriced. And yes, the KLX 250S is more expensive now than it was a few years ago, secondhand, because of the health crisis. But it hasn't risen as much as some other bikes like the WR250R, the DRZ 400 or the DR650, more popular and well-known dual sports. Now, that's not having a go at KLX owners. The KLX is still a cult classic and a very good bike. I'm just saying it's not quite as popular as those bikes I've listed. So that means that its price hasn't gone quite as crazy. The other reason is that the KLX 300 is out. So people are trying to offload their 250s to upgrade to the 300. So that's another reason that there's going to be more of them available on the market, at least from what I can see in my local market. And yes, I have been looking, and the KLX 250 was one on my short list because there were quite a few of them available. Now, there's also the value proposition for this bike on the back end as well. Given that it's secondhand, generally these bikes come with mods already on them. So you can save a bit of money there because you don't have to put bark busters on these. You don't have to put a bash plate necessarily, or handguards, or the grips you want, or a pipe. Most of that stuff is done, or you can be patient and look for a completely clean one. But if you want to save a bit of money, maybe you've got just enough money to buy this bike and you don't really have a runway for mods, getting a second-hand bike that not everyone is looking at, has the mods on it, can be a really great way of just getting the bike, getting out there and having fun, and having that crash protection as well without having to fork all that extra money out after the purchase. It can be a really great buy. I'm really thinking of the students here too. So if you're really strapped for cash, basically you're probably putting everything you have into just the bike. I think it's a much better idea to get a bike that gets you into the category and doing what you love and having the experiences. The KLX 250S, while not as glamorous as other dual sports, will get you out there immediately having fun, and you'll likely be able to pick it up with a few accessories that you want. Now, the longevity argument here and the real savings of money is these 250s can be turned into the 300 with basically the click of a finger. So at least here in Australia, I can take my KLX 250 to the Kawasaki dealership. For $1,800, I can ask them to put the 300cc kit in the 250. If you're strapped for cash, you can get the KLX 250S at a discount, learn on it, have fun, commute, do whatever it is you want to do, have those off-road adventures. And then while you're enjoying the bike, you can save up for that 300cc kit. So you're basically getting two bikes in one. So when you're ready and you feel like you need a little more power and you need a bit of an upgrade, you can throw that 300cc kit into your 250 and you've got a whole new experience, and the bike has changed for you, and it freshens everything up and gives you that little bit more power that you're probably ready for at that point. So I think it really does make a strong argument for a great value proposition. Take that to your advantage. Look at the bikes that are not in the spotlight at the moment, and I think the KLX 250S probably has the best value proposition, given that it can be turned into a 300, you can get them fairly cheap, and you can get a whole pile of accessories straight away for them. The next dual sport, of course, is another 250. Now, if you're wanting to hear about a DR650 or a DRZ400, something with a bigger motor, the bigger motors tend to get more attention because people often account capability of a motorcycle with the power of a motorcycle. And I'm not necessarily in that camp. I'm quite happy to have a 250 or a 300. I think they're a fantastic size motorcycle. They're a great compromise of power and weight and usability. And I think the Honda CRF 250L really fits that undervalued mark at the moment. It's quite a good value motorcycle for not a lot of money. Everyone, including myself, are focused on the CRF 300L. So the 250 has left the spotlight. A lot of people are selling them to get the 300, so there's plenty of them on the market, just like the KLX. They also come with a whole pile of accessories generally because people have already done all that for you, so you're saving money there. Again, with both these bikes being 250s, the insurance and the running costs are going to be cheaper than a bigger motorcycle, so that's another thing to factor in here as well. Now, unlike the KLX, the big bore kits aren't as well known. Now, I do believe there are big bore kits for the CRF 250, but they're not as common. But that doesn't mean that these bikes can't be made to be capable little bikes. I've had the privilege of being able to ride a 250L off-road and on-road, and they're actually quite capable when you set them up right. The 250L is a bit peppier than the KLX 250. It's a little more refined too in my experience. It's also got a great aftermarket supply, just like the KLX, probably even better actually, as it is slightly more popular. It's also a little more modern as well. It also hasn't gone up in price much on the second-hand market because so many people are offloading them just like the KLX. There's a lot of value propositions there, and I really would encourage you, if you're looking for a dual sport and you don't have much money, but you really want to get out there, be part of the sport and get some experience, it's going to be far better for you to get one of these little cheap motorcycles than it is to save up for a KTM 690 Enduro. So let's now move on to adventure bikes. You can't really go past the Suzuki V-Strom 650. Now, of course, it is a bit of a boring motorcycle, and sorry Suzuki riders, it doesn't really get the heart pumping with the looks. But hear me out here. The motors on these are fantastic. They're a little V-twin, which you don't see much of now. With the advent of parallel twins, V-twins are becoming very uncommon. So that really sets itself apart and will set itself apart more and more as we go into the future. So I think what will happen soon will be that these older V-twin Suzuki V-Stroms will actually start to gain a little bit more cult popularity, more than they already have because of that V-twin motor. They sound fantastic. They've got plenty of power for sitting on the highway. They've got a tall screen. They're cheap, of course. They're not as sexy as everything else, so they tend to always be cheaper on the second-hand market. The other great thing is you'll be sitting on the seat, so you won't have to look at the thing. You can only hear that great V-twin as well. I think it's a fantastic option to go with. The other thing that keeps these bikes cheaper as well is that they're learner approved. Here in Australia and places like the UK, we have graduated licensing systems. So learners move through bikes a lot more often. So they'll get a bike, then they'll sell it when they upgrade their license to get something bigger. So that means that these V-Stroms are always on the market and always available as learners move up through their bikes. If you're looking for an adventure bike to do some long tours, dirt roads, V-Strom's a great idea, especially if you can pick up a more modern one with the spoke wheels. Not as sexy as a KTM 890 Adventure, but they'll get the job done, and they're very comfortable with a great little motor. And I think too many people discount them because of their looks. But let's face it, we're in the adventure and dual sport market. It's a very utilitarian market where you'll probably be dropping your bikes. If you're not too worried about the aesthetics of the bike, you actually can enjoy the ride more because you're not stressed about dropping it in the dirt. So I think that's another advantage that a lot of people don't talk about either. Now, the final adventure bike is in the big adventure bike market. This is probably where it's hardest to find value because of how overpriced they are to start with. Big adventure bikes really have seen a huge markup in price, not only because of the health crisis, but just as the category's developed and the technology they've chucked on, the price has just gone bananas. But there are a few bargains still to be had, and the one that keeps popping up to my mind, although it's still fairly expensive, it's still cheaper compared to the competition, is the original Honda CRF 1000L. Not the old Africa Twins, but the very first of the new model Africa Twins. We've since seen soft updates, and then the CRF 1100 come out, and now we've seen new soft updates for 2022. So we've had multiple opportunities for owners of that original 1000L to upgrade to a newer model. So that means that these bikes are constantly hitting the market, which means there's a fairly decent supply. And I have noticed when I've been looking at bikes, and this was one of the bikes I considered earlier in the year, that this particular CRF 1000L hasn't kept its price as high as, say, a KTM 790 Adventure or the Tenere 700s or those kinds of bikes. It's been out a bit longer. There are newer, fresher models, particularly the 1100 that everyone wants with a bit more power. The 1000 has plenty of power. I've ridden one, it's a fantastic motor, sounds glorious when it's got a pipe on it. Even stock, it sounds pretty great. It's got the spoke wheels, a 21-inch front wheel, decent suspension travel. You can actually take this thing off pretty far off road. It looks pretty great, still looks fairly modern. You'll get a lot of creature comforts, and you're getting a big adventure bike for not a lot of money, really. You've also got the accessory market, which is huge for this bike. Also, you'll probably get this bike with a whole pile of fruit already bolted to it. So those are the 4 best motorcycles I can think of in the adventure and dual sport market that really have a fantastic value proposition that are being slept on a little bit. But if you have some fantastic ideas, please post them down below in the comment section. It would be fantastic to turn this video into a database of great ideas for people that are trying to save a little bit of money, or perhaps had enough money for the bike they wanted and now that bike has gone up in value and they can't afford it and are having to look somewhere else. That's what this video was all about, saving people money. And we forget that getting a cheap secondhand motorcycle can be a great thing because you're getting out into the dirt immediately, you're gaining those skills, you're gaining those memories that you will have for a lifetime and can be life-changing, believe me. Some of the adventure trips I have, I will never forget. I think it's far more important to have those experiences, focus on the skills and the memories you can build with the bike you can afford, rather than sitting dreaming at that $30,000 massive adventure bike that will probably take you another 10 years to save up for. Don't give up on it, but enjoy the time you have now. So on that note, that's about it for this video. Don't forget to hit the like button, maybe share it around with your mates. Thank you for your continued support as well. There's been plenty of new subscribers, so welcome aboard. It's crazy to think how much this channel is growing. It just keeps growing and growing, so thanks very much. It means a lot to me. Until next time, don't forget to stay shiny side up, and I'll catch you in the next video. See you later, guys.